Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. This week we have another entrepreneur, another founder of a business in Dubai. We're very honored to be joined by Rohaid Stanley, the co-founder of Tryloka. They are a local enterprise who assists brands in the region with relationships with consumers by utilizing the power of smart product sampling. Their mission is to provide campaign strategies and brand identity to prospective consumers through understanding each business USP and integrating it with unfiltered consumer feedback. So smart product sampling, we're into a new era of technology and everything, and this is in sampling as well. Today we're going to talk about the story of Tryloka, how Rohaid and his team came up with the company, the benefits of sampling in marketing, and also the targeting audiences with consumer learning, and then talk about the future as well. So welcome, Rohaid.
Thank you for having me.
So thanks for coming in. So yeah, can you tell us what's your sales pitch? What's Tryloka?
All right, I think you said it better than I did, to be honest. But Tryloka really came about because we saw a gap in the market. Sampling is an age-old practice, but we wanted to introduce was a smarter way of doing it and allowing brands to digitally target their consumers as opposed to taking the traditional route that we're all used to, which is in-store sampling or handing out samples in stalls and kiosks. And in doing so, we realized that it's a much more measured and much more controlled process. A lot of the sampling activities that we saw in the past were great, and they were a great way to get a certain aspect of the entire campaign. But a lot of the data was pretty anecdotal. And what we realized was without data-backed campaigns, it's very difficult to measure KPIs for. So simply put, the long and short is we allow brands to send physical product samples to digitally target consumers. Okay. And on the flip side, consumers get to try new and exciting products that some of them which haven't even hit the market yet, and give honest feedback, no strings attached. It's a free platform. It's what we like to call free commerce, where there's no buying and selling. Brands put their products on the platform, target a consumer, consumers get to try it absolutely free.
Okay, amazing. Good sales pitch. I understand it. Interview over. So I think many people will know of sampling in terms of how they experience with products, in the past. And obviously, with the pandemic and with the digital transformation of everything, this is an industry that we, mightn't have as much consumer touch points in the mall and things like that. So how did you go about finding the solution to that gap?
So, like a lot of the businesses, even our business sort of came about because of a problem that we personally sort of saw. During the pandemic, or right before the pandemic hit, we had a co-founder of ours who actually was looking to start an online food company, and she wanted to bake her goods and sort of distribute it to a lot of audience. Now, everybody in her circle, whoever tried the products, knew that it's a good product, but what the difficulty she was facing was to get more and more people to try it. And the medium that she was utilizing, like a lot of us who start off, is digital. So Instagram, Facebook, and running ads and sponsored ads. But the challenge is that you can't really taste or smell the internet. So what you see is bells and whistles, and a lot of great products get lost in the noise. So we just thought that if there's one person that we know personally that's going through this challenge, I'm sure there are a lot of other young SMEs coming about that have a similar problem, that have a great product, and have one or two mediums that everybody's using to sort of sell that product. So we thought that if we provided a platform to all these businesses, big or small, and gave them a platform where they could actually target consumers who they would like to send their samples to. Consumers can try it from the comfort of their home, so they don't have to go out. They don't have to go out to pick up the samples. They don't have to pay for the service. And we realized that in doing so for the consumer, it brings about an ethical debt. That here's a brand who's reached out to me, given me a free product sample or a set of product samples, and the least they expect me to give in return is honest feedback, unbiased. And what we notice is people are a lot more comfortable to give an opinion when they're behind a computer screen. The challenge within stores was, some people, me for instance, even if I didn't like a product, I wouldn't really say it to someone's face. because I've been there, so I wouldn't really want to do it. And that's how really that concept came about, and we started talking to more and more brands and more companies within the space, whether it was food and beverage or beauty or cosmetics of any type for that matter. And we realized that there really is a need. Everybody's struggling with this problem. So why not sort of put together a solution that solves it?
Okay, great. So if I'm a brand or consumer, I've been on your website and I know there's two options. I can register as a brand. I can also register as a consumer. Can you talk us through both journeys of what happens next?
So I'll start from the consumer point. For the consumer, it's extremely simple. You log on to the website and we'll ask you to go through a 10-second registration process. Now, during this registration process, we get a silhouette of the individual that, this is a male, lives in JLT, he's into fitness, and that helps us understand on a very high perspective who this individual is. Furthermore, once individuals have registered, we ask them to personalize their profile. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. What this allows us to do is really get into the nitty-gritty of who this consumer is. And by asking these questions up front, we're quite honest with our users that every answer that you give, we're not trying to be invasive, but the idea is that we want to send you relevant product samples. We want to send products your way that you would actually want to try. So this allows us to understand if this person is a tea drinker or a coffee drinker. Is this person, is he vegan or not? Is he or she into yoga or Pilates or XYZ? So stuff of that sort that helps us really understand key metrics about a consumer that we can then use to send relevant product samples their way. As far as as a brand is concerned, we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all strategy for brands. That's why with every brand that we approach or that approaches us, we like to sit down and understand what's their sampling goal. Are they looking to capture feedback? Is that the end game? Are they looking for online reviews? Are they looking for some social media buzz? Or are they just looking to generate awareness? So based on that, we devise a strategy, and we take the strategy that the brand and us, we sit together and decide on how long do they want the campaign to run, who's the target audience, what's the expected results, and this helps us preempt some of the metrics that we'll be able to offer them, the KPIs that they can expect from the strategy. And that's about it. We collect the samples from the brands, we launch the campaign, campaigns go live on our platforms, on social media. All the members who are targeted, who fit that campaign requirement, get notifications via email, via SMS, that you've been matched to samples. They come, they claim the samples, they get delivered to them, and we prompt them for feedback.
Okay, great. Interesting. What sort of Tryloka, does it fall under a marketing services category, and what's the sort of business strategy here?
So the idea is we fall under a market research firm, and the idea is for us to facilitate existing market research firms and existing brands and existing FMCGs or cosmetic companies to be part of their marketing mix. That's the industry we really want to focus on, because with the information that we gather, it's so powerful that with a few months of launch, we've been able to collect data points across 50,000 answers. Now these 50,000 answers to a brand are extremely essential because this helps them understand: is my packaging working? Is my price points working? Am I distributing my product in the right areas? Am I on the right online platforms? What's the consumer have to say about that? So the research that we provide to these marketing firms or these agencies and these brands directly allows them to further enhance their current marketing activities, further preempt new product launches. So we work with a lot of companies that are doing new product developments, and we get on board at a point where they're still conceptualizing. And with the information that we have, we're able to tell them what's currently working with the demographic that you're looking to target. This is what's currently working. So that's the industry we're playing at. It's sampling is something that's part of every company's marketing mix. At every company we've spoken to, big or small, they've engaged in sampling in some shape, manner, or form. Everybody has a budget for sampling. So our idea was just to allow them to do it smarter, better, faster, cheaper.
Interesting. Yeah, of course, product is one of the best marketing tools that people can have,
Correct.
and it's one of the cheapest because
Correct.
they're already making it. So you know, marketing research firms have been around forever. Some of them are really well known, part of the big kind of international marketing services groups. Is that your background, or is that your co-founders' backgrounds, or how did you sort of know a lot about this space?
To be honest, I come from a background, and a lot of us come from a background that's very non-traditional and not what we do. I'm someone who graduated in '08 from a hospitality school. Now, what that allowed us to do, anybody who's worked in hospitality knows that you're in the line of fire 24/7. There's no you can't hide behind a computer screen. The customer is right there, and you have to sort of either preempt what they're asking or come up with solutions on the spot. This allowed us to really understand consumer behavior, at least in this region. I was born and raised in Saudi. I've been in Dubai since 2008. So consumer
Okay.
psyche while working in hotels and in different roles, that really helped to understand what is it that people really want. How do you cater to that? And furthermore, beyond that, we have on our founding team people who've been in marketing, who've been in tech, like me, who've been in operations, procurement, supply chain, hospitality. So we've got a diverse skill set that allowed us to really understand that what is it that consumers really want, what is it that brands really want, and how do we bridge that gap? And we just thought that sampling is a very untapped thing, that every brand is looking to get their product into the hands of the right consumer, and sampling is a great way to do that. And we just thought that by providing a platform, we can really facilitate that process.
Interesting. Great. And you mentioned that earlier off air that it was set up in DIFC. Why was that free zone chosen? And also, when did you launch the company?
So we, like a lot of startups, when we were looking to set up this company, we looked at different options. But what DIFC provided was, I was completing my MBA from a university in DIFC, and that's where I came to know about this platform called DIFC Innovation Hub. Now, what that platform really does is it's a great way for young companies, especially that fall in the tech domain, to provide a pitch to DIFC, and if you get accepted, it's a really simple process of setting up your company, getting a small office space, getting a good backing from DIFC. And it's a great validation of the concept as well, that you're not just sort of setting up there because you have to pay to get in, but there's sort of a verification process. And we thought that by looking at different sort of free zones and mainland and different segments that there were at that time, we just thought that DIFC really just ticked all the boxes. And that's something that to a lot of the entrepreneurs that now I speak to, I really recommend to them that if you fall within that domain of tech and something innovative that you're trying to bring into the market, I think DIFC is a great space to be in.
Good to know. The Innovation Hub, is that the same as, is that what it's called? It's not DTech, which is in Silicon Oasis. That's something else.
Yeah, that's okay. Silicon Oasis. So DIFC has a fintech hub and an innovation hub.
Oh yeah.
So the fintech has obviously all the fintech companies, and that's predominantly what they cater to. With the innovation hub, it's a bit more broad.
Okay.
Anybody who's in, we've got companies over there that are in F&B. We've got companies there that are in crypto. We've got companies like ours that are in a marketing space. So it's a bit broad. The only, I guess, their prerequisite is that you have to have, it should be built on a tech platform.
Yeah. And your tech platform is the website that will be an app, or how more techy are you going with this?
So we've got big plans. Right now it's a web app that's mobile friendly, but we're looking to launch our app soon. But the real sort of tech that goes into this is the algorithm that helps us match the right consumer to the right brand.
Okay.
That's really the USB of the platform. That's where the AI kicks in and all of that. So everything that's on the front end is, again, it's bells and whistles. It's the website, it's the platform. But what happens on the back end is really the tech that we've built.
Okay, and we can talk a lot about the tech trends as well later in the conversation. Just a few other things as well. The name, what does?
I was waiting for that. That's the first question we get. So Tryloka, we had a very lengthy, strenuous conversation to come up with the name, and we wanted a name that's beyond sampling. We wanted, because that's what we knew the vision of the company was. It's going to go beyond sampling. And the idea was to democratize trial as a concept. Anybody should be able to try, whether it's a product or a service or anything, and it should be a fair exchange between brands and consumers, this trial process. So we knew we wanted to use the word try in the concept, and it worked well because we're 3 founders, so try, TRI, worked well with that.
Yeah.
And Loka as a word in Sanskrit means universe, so the idea was just try everything.
Nice.
And that was the
there we go. It's good. It's catchy. It's memorable.
Yeah,
it's a good name. So talking a little bit more about sampling as well. What do you think the consumer audience is for sampling? In that gap that you described in the digital world. If I'm purchasing something online, I kind of want to try it.
Correct.
But I'm not going to a marketing services place. Like, I just need to test it first.
Right.
So how do you get the normal consumer? Can they say, hey, I like this this new cupcake or whatever? Don't know what to tell cupcakes, but I want to try it. Or is it more like people sign up as try lists, their kind of marketing backgrounds themselves? Or how do you get it to be the consumer?
So, if you think about it, trial as a concept is sort of innately within all of us. What's the first thing that you do when somebody recommends a movie? You watch a trailer. What's the first thing that you do when somebody recommends a good book? You read a summary. You get hooked onto a new software. The first thing you do is download a trial version. Consumers right now, so we knew that sort of concept of trial exists. Now, we don't need anybody to be an influencer or from a marketing background or anybody who's of a certain type to come onto the platform. The idea is to take the platform to them. So that's why the idea is that a lot of the growth that we've seen is organic. People see a lot of products online, on Instagram and all these platforms. And the second they see this tag over there or this concept that try it for free, they get redirected to our platform. So sort of by innately sort of disguising ourselves onto the brands that we work with and stuff, we sort of bring that traffic towards us organically without having to do too much. That's one way of going about it. And once those consumers are onto our platform, they realize that there's a lot they can try for free. Once they get over the fact that, is this a scam? Is this really going to work? Once that's done, we see a lot of organic word of mouth being spread around where people tell their friends and those friends tell their other friends. So we've seen growth month on month, very organic that way. And we make it quite seamless, the process of getting onboarded. So there's no prerequisite. I don't need your bank details. I don't need your social handles or anything. I just need to know who you are as an individual. And once I do, I'll send you samples. All I ask in return is you give me feedback. So right now we've seen that it'll take a bit of time to sort of obviously market ourselves. We're only a 2-month-old company, so it'll take a bit of time to get out there and sort of spread the word that there is a platform that exists now where you can try stuff for free, no strings attached. The only catch is that I have to give feedback, and samples will get matched to me, and then I can choose. We're not a platform where you log in and you see a bunch of items that you can click, and you get it delivered to you. That's something that we wanted to be very careful about. That these brands that we work with, they spend a lot of time and effort coming up with these samples. So we wanted to make sure that they reach in the hands of the right consumer.
Yeah, definitely. Because what I was getting at is that there's 2 types of freebies online, right? There's that one where you give feedback, or what you're doing not necessarily hasn't been online in the past, but you give feedback and it's marketing research. And there's the other part of this in a digital world, which the expectation is that you post not a review, but even an image.
Right.
So people are kind of trained on that, aren't they?
Right.
Like they're kind of trained on, if I'm a startup company and I send out product to influencers, that's my marketing, but it's not necessarily a review. It doesn't kind of help the purchasing funnel. So how do you kind of combat that? If clients are coming to Tryloka and they're saying, oh, great, do people say, how many followers do your testers have, and things like that?
That's something that that was one of the first things that we thought about, that, we didn't want to be an influencer management platform. We didn't want to send out the message that we only exclusively work with influencers, and unless you've got an X amount of following, you don't get to try. We've sent out samples to people that weren't even present on social media platforms, but they gave great reviews. And when we spoke to brands, there were some that obviously that was their expectation. But we were quite honest in saying that, we don't exclusively work with influencers. We've got a lot of influencers on the platform that have happened to come organically, but we don't do paid partnerships. That's not our business model. That's not a revenue stream for us. What we do is, I think it's something that's quite apt, and something that we sort of introduced into this company as well. I think it was Sam Altman who said that you'd rather have a few people that love your product than a lot of people just kind of like it. And that's something that we're trying to educate to the brands as well, that every single person who gets your sample, they by default, if they like it, they tend to talk about it. And if you see our social channels, you see a lot of people organically, with no push from ours, have done unboxings, have talked about the brand, have tagged brands. So it's created this sort of organic digital noise that the brands appreciate. And on the back end, what these brands get to see, which others don't, is descriptive reviews and ratings and the data around it. So which they can't really get from an influencer. With influencers, we've worked as a startup, we've worked with certain influencers as well, just to physically experiment. What is it that we're offering versus what is it that you get from an influencer? And again, we saw that a lot of the stuff that you get is anecdotal, where you can't really measure certain things that last beyond the influencer campaign. With sampling with us, what you get to do is you get to continue that conversation with your consumers. It's not a one-off transaction. It's not just sample, review, end of conversation. These brands get to re-engage with these consumers, retarget these consumers. Some of them have had physical conversations with consumers who've given bad reviews and good reviews, to understand what is it that you liked, what is it that you didn't like. And that was really the idea, to build a community where anybody and everybody can log on, give their opinions, give their feedback, and brands get to take full advantage from that.
It's that sort of net promoter score aspect as well, where you're working with people to be advocates as well. So what's the kind of key point with I've lost the thought. But so I come from a marketing background as well, and I would have understood marketing research from FMCG and from kind of global conglomerates and how they do sampling. But when it's startups, and when it's more sort of, this term has been on the show before, but the digital native vertical brands, like your friend at the start, they will send the product to people on social media, or they might send out package to distributors and that type of thing. And it's a way of, but that's something that they can manage themselves or with influencers, but they're not actually getting the research, they're not getting the feedback and the report that you might provide. So how do you kind of get that from are your target audience or customers the big multinationals, or are they the startups, and how do you get startups to behave like multinationals?
Great question. So for us, there's two things, right? The digitally native vertical brands that you mentioned, we work with them, and we've worked with FMCGs, larger FMCGs. Now, the brands that currently are D2C already, where they send their product directly to the consumer and they manage their vertical supply chain, they get the consumer to them, and that's great. But what we can offer is, right now you get consumers that by default come to you and they're purchasing from you, and they probably have gotten their friends hooked onto your platform as well. But wouldn't you want to know people that are currently not buying from you, or are currently buying a certain type of product that kind of fits in your profile, but they're not buying from you? Wouldn't you want to know why not? What's not working? And that's something that we can provide. And, what we can provide is a very holistic view on what demographic thinks of your product in what sense. That's something that they find it challenging to provide, and and that's where we come in. So a lot of the clients that we have are actually D2C companies who have their own database of consumers, but they use us because they're like, a lot of the feedback and reviews and ratings that I get through you guys, that allows me to tap into a different market set altogether. That allows me to have conversations with people who tried my product but didn't like it, who've tried my product in the past but do not want to promote my product anymore. That's the conversation that they get to have with consumers onto our platform. And with larger FMCGs, we realize that whether it's a small D2C brand that has just launched or a very large FMCG, sampling as a concept is something both of them want to engage in. With the larger FMCGs, their goal is slightly different. Obviously, they do want to sample, but one of the biggest plays they want to get into is to establish these direct-to-consumer relationships and engage in consumer learning beyond the sampling campaign. So the new buzzword now is D2C. A lot of the FMCGs have either created their own D2C platforms or have acquired companies that were currently in the D2C space. So we knew that that's something that they want, and through sampling, through a very simple exchange of free products, they get to establish these D2C relationships. Consumers on our platform have the opportunity to opt into the brand CRM directly. So now these 100, 200, 300,000 samples you've distributed, 80% of those people have opted into your platform. These are now your consumers. You can engage in conversations. You don't need Tryloka anymore for that. So that's different requirements from be it small D2Cs versus larger FMCGs, but the medium as sampling is still the same.
Yeah, fascinating. So rather than, I love what you did there, rather than turning conglomerates and startups into conglomerates, you're turning conglomerates into startups and changing how they're thinking. But some of those, it's that sort of beta mode, isn't it? Like some of product testing and product development can take months and years. And there's famous stories, with New Coke. There's a new Coke out now of how product launches can go wrong and how the amount of research that goes into it. What do you think the digital native vertical brands, like what's the clients that you work with, when you approach them, have they done any sampling? Have they done any product testing? And what's the kind of stage that you receive them at?
So we were quite surprised to learn that, in our conversations with some of the larger companies, we knew from our research, and pretty much everybody knew who followed that brand, that a certain product they launched failed. And we took that as a case study and approached these brands that, hey, we know you launched this product, it didn't do well. We just like to understand why, and perhaps we could help. And what we realized in our conversations with some of these companies was that their initial focus group or product test is people from within the organization.
Okay.
And we thought that, that's a great way to get initial responses, reactions and stuff. And, but some of them didn't really have the budgets to hire an external party and do a full-fledged focus group, which is fine, which is completely understandable. But the ones who did, even despite doing all that, certain products still failed. And what we realized is that it's a concept that everybody wants to get into. Everybody finds it fascinating when we give this pitch that, I'll get your product into consumers, I'll give you feedback, but they're apprehensive that I don't want a consumer to try my product before anybody in the market does, because what if they talk bad about it? What if they post negatively about it? And that's why a lot of these brands didn't engage in these practices and sometimes launch products with a very small focus group because of that fear, because they don't want any negative repercussions before the launch. And we've seen stories of that happen where, negative press sort of took over a product even before it was launched, be it, a tech company or a physical product. And that's why a lot of these brands were apprehensive to go full scale sampling. And that's obviously something that we have to take into consideration as well when we work with bigger companies and facilitate a new product development for them. And that'll obviously require learning on our side as well, and a bit of trust on both sides, from us to the brand to us, and us to our consumers who are going to try these products.
Interesting. I was just thinking as you were talking, right, that you're in the middle, so you've got brands and then consumers. Do you ever envisage, not that you launch your own brands, but do you ever envisage having your own product testers and samplers? I'm aware of an entity that's part of Hearst Media, and they've got testing labs in the UK where they work with the kind of P&Gs and Unilevers of the world, and they test everything like that. Is that something that you could potentially offer as well?
We would like to. Like I said, the end goal is to sort of make this a very easy process for anybody and everybody, and eventually we would like to have our own specialized testers that they don't necessarily have to be part of our team sitting in the office, but they would be people specialists that we could approach as and when we have these requirements from these brands. But right now our focus is really on building a community where anybody and everybody can try a product and post reviews.
Okay.
And that's the type of clientele that we're going after as well, because like I said, we're still a startup, we're still young. So we want to ensure that the service that we offer is within the realm of what we can physically provide and test it out. Right now we've seen that in 2 months, like I said, we've got 50,000 responses from a wide variety of audience. Now that's a lot of data that we're currently sitting on, and that's data that is like gold dust to a lot of the brands. So we want to make sure that this end of the process or this end of the spectrum gets done well, and eventually the end goal is we want to be sort of align ourselves with every brand's marketing mix. So each time they have a new product launch, ours is a service that they think of, and we have our own testers in-house who can facilitate that process.
Okay, interesting. And what about digital products? When people launch an app, they get QA and they get UX UI testing.
Correct.
But what about, how can you turn that a little bit and provide, would people actually find a need for this consumer-facing fintech app or this media app or whatever? Like, can you do a digital feedback?
Again, that's something that we want to get into. Like I said, the idea is to democratize trial as a concept, whether it's a product or a service or an app that's being launched. We want to be able to facilitate any kind of trial that gets out into the market. And I think if you approach the right consumer, if I give my own example, I was if I'm an avid fan of a particular brand and that brand happened to reach out to me and said, hey, I'm launching a new product, I know you're a regular consumer, I'd like you to test it out for me, I don't see a reason why I wouldn't, because I know I love that brand, I know I've been following it for a while, and the fact that they've reached out to me directly is a good sign. So I think getting the right consumer, approaching the right consumer, approaching them in the right way allows brands to really test out products, services, or anything for that matter. So the process has to be done correctly, and I think parties on both ends are quite honest, and they're willing to engage in this sort of transaction where I'll give you a product or a service and you give me honest feedback. And I think definitely that's something that we want to get into, products and services.
Okay, so from say if we take the F&B or if we take the food section, how can you offer a compelling alternative to a market research company that might have partnered up with a food store in the past that has a stand? When I'm walking by, I taste the yogurt or whatever.
Right.
How can you kind of provide that volume of footfall and that volume of kind of instant feedback and compete with that service? So,
goes back to what I said earlier. You'd rather have a few people that love your product than a lot that just kind of like it. We can engage, we can tap into larger databases if we need to. We can tap into a database of a much larger e-com provider in exchange for, and have a barter system going with them. And we have done that in the past. But what happens in those transactions is a consumer might come to the kiosk, might try a product, might even make a purchase, and then walks away. What happens beyond that? Does he come back? Did he make another purchase? Did he have an aftertaste that wasn't to his liking? Did he promote your product after that? How do you carry on that conversation? So we don't want that conversation to end at try my sample at this kiosk, walk away with it, and that's it. We want the brands to be able to take that much further beyond just an initial exchange of sampling and testing, and re-engage with these consumers each time they have a new product to test, remarket, retarget these consumers each time they have an offer going on. That's something that these consumers want. Like I said, my example, if I'm an avid fan of a particular brand and that brand reaches out to me each time they have a new flavor, each time they have a new offer going out, that would make me an even better loyalist than I was before. That would make me talk about this brand even more than promote it to all my entire circle. And that's really what we want to do. We want to help establish relationships rather than a one-off exchange and make it a transaction that does not go beyond that one sample that was exchanged between a brand and a consumer.
Interesting. So you touched earlier on AI. What are the people obviously are observing how trends and behavior and consuming patterns are changing, particularly in the last 18 months. And we see kind of multinationals and big companies like Amazon having, stores that we can check in and check out without passing by a till or whatever. What are the, in addition to AI, what are the kind of smart sampling trends that you can that Tryloka can take advantage of? Or
I think one of the biggest things that we wanted to get into is that, when you talk about AI or when you talk about, consumer learning, a lot of the practices that were done in the past were a bit invasive when it comes to the consumer. Consumers, despite knowing that there's certain information being collected, didn't anticipate that the action that a brand would take based on that data. And some found it offensive, some found it intrusive. That's not something that I was willing to share. How did you get this information? So we wanted to be extremely careful that although there's an AI element to our platform, every data point that we use as far as the consumer is concerned is something that we ask them upfront. That, are you a tea drinker or a coffee drinker, for that matter? By asking questions upfront, by making it completely sort of honest that I am asking these set of questions because I want to send relevant product samples your way, which will always be free. There will be no point where I ask you for something in exchange other than your feedback. In doing so, we're able to get a lot of information that you can't just gather through pure third-party cookies or just AI. It's very difficult to understand, me as an individual, I'm currently going through a weight loss regime, let's say. How do you get that? I may be purchasing items of a certain pattern, but that could mean anything, So by asking the question up front, we encourage, users to provide honest information, because why would I lie about something when I know that if I give the wrong answer, I'll be given those product samples, something that I don't really want. So that these sort of data points, these questions, these answers that we get to questions, and by looking at the type of samples that these users have consumed, the type of responses they provide, this really helps us go to these brands and say, this is the current trend that we've seen. And they can re-engage with these users and have consumer learning that is beyond just AI. That is beyond a superficial way of learning. That's something where you can engage with consumers directly, and you have a broad base of consumers. And I think consumer learning and changing needs and the evolving requirements of the consumers, it's paramount right now. Everybody wants to get inside the consumer's head. What are they thinking? And we just thought that let's cut through the noise. Let's just ask them, what is it that you want? And we realized that by just asking them the question in exchange for free products, we're able to tap into that psyche, which has worked out well for us so far.
It sounds like the platform or the tech part of it is crucial in terms of how people enter data, how you manage data, how you utilize that data and visualize that data. Is that where most of your effort goes? And to that point, do you need investment for something like that? And how have you approached that?
Right now, yeah, a lot of our effort goes into curating, collating, and sort of structuring the data that we create. So a lot of time when we were launching went into structuring that data into a way that's easily readable to not just larger FMCGs, but even the smaller SMEs. We didn't want to use a lot of jargon. We didn't want to make it complicated for someone to say, hey, I've got this this great report, but I don't know what it means. And we saw this challenge with a lot of the brands that we worked with, where they said, hey, I love your concept, I'd love to work with you, but I don't have the wherewithal right now to make sense of this heaps and heaps of data. So we sit down with these brands and we talk them through what everything means. But in the future, when in 2 months, if we're able to gather 50,000 responses, we know that with more campaigns, it's just going to get larger and bigger and better. And that's when obviously we would look into getting funding. Right now, we're at that phase where we're bootstrapping, because we're still a young company, and we're doing okay so far. But eventually, obviously, that's what we need to get into to be able to take this into other markets, to be able to expand this regionally, to be able to approach other brands, newer brands, bigger brands, and be able to sort of enhance the way we collect data, the way we devise our data. And yeah, for that we would definitely need funding.
Interesting. We'll talk about the expansion plans to end with, but just on that, at that point of view, in terms of pricing, how much is it to work with Tryloka? Like what's your business model?
So we work in two different ways. We can do a campaign pricing, or we can do a per sample cost. What that means is that we can go to a brand, and what I've done personally with a lot of brands I talk to is how much would you be willing to spend on an activity of this sort? If they tell me, I just have a marketing budget of 5,000 dirhams, we will devise something that works well within 5,000 dirhams. And my benchmark to them is, I want to know the KPIs that you achieved in a digital advert that you did on Instagram or Facebook. That's what I want to see. And I'll be able to tell you what I can get to you for the same amount of money. So that's a campaign-based model where I look at the budget, I'll look at their expectation, and I'll run a campaign for them. And then there's a per sample model where it can go as little as 2 dirhams a sample to 15 dirhams a sample, based on what the brand is looking to achieve. We've run both campaigns, and anything in between really, because for us the pricing, the biggest factor in our cost is fulfillment, because there's no consumers are not going to wait weeks on end to get free samples. We want to ensure that they get samples at a point where it's still fresh in their mind that I had requested for samples.
Makes sense.
So we take too long and they lose interest. And that's where the biggest cost factor of it goes. So what we ask brands to do is you can co-op with other brands and put your samples along with 5-6 other brands. So you split the cost, and it's much cheaper and more economical to you, and you still get 100% share of voice. So we would never put two competing products in the same box. So each brand is non-competing, gets subcategory exclusivity, but they still share cost. And if these 6 brands are looking to target the same consumer persona, it makes sense as a sample together.
True, and the consumer might want to receive more as well.
Exactly, it makes sense for them as well. And if there are certain brands that we work with that wanted box exclusivity, where they said, I'm okay with the price points because that's what it would cost me to send it myself if I were to deliver it. I want a box exclusivity. I want only my products to go out to these consumers, which is fine with us as well. So it really depends, what I said earlier, on what the brand's needs are. And we're quite, flexible with how we price it and how we go about it.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that you've said as we've talked, especially, is that point about, digital marketing these days is very sort of performance conversion related, and it's put an image up or a video or boost it and then get results, but actually no one's touched the product.
Right.
So it's really interesting when you think about it from that point of view. Okay, last big question I love to ask is, you hinted at expansion. You grew up in Saudi Arabia, as you mentioned. What's your kind of view on this region macroeconomically? Like, do you think the Middle East as emerging market will emerge?
No, I think so. I was, I've just started on this entrepreneurial journey quite recently, but I've been part of the Middle East for a while. Born and raised in Saudi. My grandfather was in Saudi, so we've been associated with this part of the world for a very long time. And I came in the UAE, in 08, where it was a relatively bad time. But since then, what we've seen and what we continue to see is that we have the ability to bounce back anytime something bad happens. Even with the pandemic, we have the ability and the drive to bounce back. And I think with everything that the UAE is doing now, with supporting young companies, supporting entrepreneurs, making it extremely easy for anybody to start a business. From as little as 1,000 dirhams, you can start selling your product online. I think efforts like these and initiatives like these really help all of us sort of trust what the UAE is doing even more. And I think the more and more we talk to new brands, a lot of the brands we worked with were brands that had just entered this market. And in talking with them, asking them, why is it that you chose UAE as a launching pad? A lot of them said that it's a great way, because it's a very diverse population. It's a small population, but it's very diverse. So what better way for me to test out my product with different nationalities, different cultures than the UAE? And I think that really, will attract more and more businesses to set up shop here, more and more products to use this as a launching pad. And for UAE to come up with their own products of their own. There's a lot of great products being developed out of the UAE. There are a lot of good startups that have come out of the UAE. So I think, I'm quite positive with what's to come, and I'm quite looking forward to it as well.
Amazing. It's good to hear. And touching on manufacturing in the UAE is a sign of an emerging market as well. And I think, Rohaid, thank you so much for sharing your story. Tryloka is a testament like that this company kind of exists and thrive, shows that there are needs and shows that the economy is growing, and shows that there are lots of people out there and new brands as well.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and we'll follow your story.
Thank you so much.
That's it for another episode of Dubai Works. Thank you so much for listening, and please leave a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to. It really helps with organic searches. Also, if you'd like to appear on Dubai Works or know someone who has an inspiring business story in Dubai, please do get in touch on any of the smashy social platforms.